Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Beat, part of the Triple Play Fantasy Network. Thanks for joining us. On this episode, we are going to be talking all things Texas Rangers, an exciting team with lots of fantasy relevant players. We'll be interviewing Levi Weaver, who covers the Rangers for The Athletic, and then myself and my co-host, Mike Carter, will be breaking down all of that information from a fantasy perspective. Before we get started, I'm just going to put a quick disclaimer out there. My voice may be a little bit more nasally and annoying than it normally is. Frankly, I don't know how anybody listens to my voice on a good day. My body shudders every time I play back one of these episodes and listen to myself. God bless all of you for hanging in there. But yeah, I'm a little congested, not feeling 100%. I know I'm fighting something off, as my house has been absolutely ravaged by every respiratory illness known to man. This year, we've hit the trifecta of COVID, RSV, and flu, which I feel like you should get some type of reward or at least unlock a bonus in this silly simulation that we're in. But man, it's just been brutal. Last night was the first night I slept well in about a month. And I know it's not just me. Everybody I talk to is sick or has a sick kid or something going on. It's gotten so bad you can't even get a bottle of Tylenol or Motrin for your kids anymore. I drove around all morning the other day, went to gas stations, pharmacies, grocery stores, and finally found one bottle of ibuprofen at the Dollar Effin' General. Might as well have been the $1 billion General because I felt like I hit the damn lotto. Y'all are worried about closer scarcity right now. Us parents are worried about medication scarcity. But I'll be honest, I'm not even going to give it to my kids. I am going to hold on to it as a bargaining chip if I need to make a midseason trade in one of my leagues. So if one of my closers goes down, I'm going to trade you ibuprofen for your Edwin Diaz. Straight up. But anyway, I'm just going to push through. You know, we got to put our content out there. This might be like my Jordan flu game, elevating over Byron Russell for that game winner. I don't know what the equivalent of that would be on a fantasy baseball podcast. Let a man dream. I'm joined by a man who knows a thing or two about Chicago, my co-host, Mike Carter. Mike, tell me two things. Where were you when Jordan hit that game winner in 1997? And just as a follow-up to what I was talking about before, has your household been able to stay relatively healthy through this hellish winter that we've been having?
Well, in the summer of 97, I was a young man sitting there with some of my friends at a friend's house, imbibing a little too much, having some terrible snacks, watching Jordan throw down 38 on the Jazz that night and pushing off of Brian Russell there at the end to make his dagger shot. And I remember at the end of it just going off on everybody in the room and saying, that's it. He's going to walk away. He should just walk away right now, which he did. Then, came back, and I don't think he really tarnished his legacy. I mean, I still think I'm a homer. I still think MJ is the best player to ever have played in the NBA. I'll stand by that. Anybody who wants to come at me with LeBron, we can talk about it. I'm open-minded, but I'm going to go with MJ on this one, even though I'm a Chicago guy. And to answer your other question about illness, well, I'll leave it to you this way. My daughter was just on a week-long orchestra trip to Disney World with our local town of Batavia orchestra kids and choir kids and band kids, and had 2 24-hour bus rides in the last week. So I'll let you figure out how everybody's feeling at my house. There is definitely some type of respiratory thing going around. Lucky for me, because I tend to isolate after long days of work and read my baseball forecaster and talk to you guys and talk about baseball stuff. I haven't gotten it yet, but Katie and Ellie and Jack have been kind of passing it back and forth to each other all week. So not the situation you've been in, Torres, but we're having similar issues here too. So.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing better than me, because it's been really tough. But yeah, let's cut right to the chase here. Talk about the Texas Rangers. So we're gonna have Levi on in a few minutes, and like I mentioned at the top, there's some really interesting players on this team. So Mike, what are you hoping to learn from this interview, and what are you looking forward to most about it?
Well, one of the things that I find really interesting is the amount of money that the Rangers have spent in the last two off seasons is pretty staggering. And I'm not sure that they're any more than the third best team in their division. So I'll be interested to see what Levi has to say about that. If he thinks that I'm wrong, or if he thinks that that's a legitimate claim. I'll be interested to hear about that. And I think the other thing that I'm really interested in hearing about is what Bruce Bochy is going to bring to this team. He's got 3 World Series titles to his name. It's been a while, not as long as it was for Tony La Russa, which we're going to forget about that. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But I want to know what he thinks Bochy is going to bring to the table there, because the Rangers have not exactly been a good team the last few years, despite their $561 million spending spree last year, and then another 200 and some million on top of that this year, 263 million this year. So let's get to it. Let's see what he has to say about it. I'm interested.
All right, so let's bring him in. Levi Weaver of The Athletic, beat writer for the Texas Rangers. Levi, thank you so much for joining us. And can you just start out by telling Mike that he's wrong? Because I like telling Mike that he's wrong.
He doesn't even know what he's saying I'm wrong to yet, Torres.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you guys are just bringing me right into the war here. I feel like I got the Harry Potter sorting hat, and I've just been asked to join Team Torres here.
That's right.
So I think the question, if I heard it right, was are the Rangers any better than the third best team in the AL West? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's the gist of it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, until they prove otherwise, sure. The Mariners took big steps forward last season. They didn't do a whole lot this offseason, but they kind of didn't have to. And until the Astros are not the reigning world champions, I think they have to be considered the favorites. So, yeah, I mean, the Rangers are looking to leapfrog the Angels. That seems doable because the Angels have been cursed for years and years and somehow never can manage to put it together, despite having 2 of the best baseball players of all time. And I mean, Julio Rodriguez is super exciting. The Mariners had such a great year last year. It was actually ironically just outside the visitors clubhouse at Angel Stadium when they hit that home run to finally go to the playoffs. We were all just sort of hoping that clubhouse would wait and that we wouldn't get to go in until the game was over. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair claim, but they've sure taken some steps to try and throw that narrative off. I mean, that's been a big off season.
Yeah, well, let's start with their biggest acquisition of the offseason, and that's Jacob DeGrom. Mm-hmm. So would like to get your thoughts on the signing and I guess his outlook, and from a fantasy perspective, we all want to know how much is he going to pitch, right? I mean, is he, I know, listen, they paid him so much money that they can't really baby him, and they really need him to be competitive in that division. So just want to get your perspective, if you have any insight into, how the Rangers view him at the top of their rotation.
Yeah, I think they're in an interesting position with him because, like you said, they can't baby him to win. They need him to pitch a full workload. But if they don't baby him, is he going to pitch like 10 games this year? And then, that's worse. I think all along the sort of timeline seems to have been they wanted to improve last year, which they did technically. They lost a lot of 1-run games. They were better than the year before, but they still were bad. Contend for a playoff spot this year and then really go for it in 2024. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a scenario where they do maybe kind of baby him a little bit this year, just to sort of try and get a healthy season under his belt and then really, push the gas pedal down in 2024. But you're never going to get a straight answer talking to the player or the person who just signed off on a paycheck of that size. They're all like, yeah, he's healthy. Like, he's like, right. Yeah, I feel great. I'm going to pitch 32 starts. And we're like,
yeah,
okay. I hope you're right. Everybody hopes you're right, except for Mets fans. But yeah, that's the big risk. I mean, you've identified it. I wish I had a better answer for you than just like, yes, you are asking the right question. But yeah, I mean, who knows? The Rangers made a big trade a couple of years ago, and brought in Corey Kluber, and he was meant to be their like new stud guy. And Corey Kluber is not Jacob DeGrom. I get it. He was coming off a bad year in Cleveland. DeGrom's coming off being like, the best pitcher in the world when he's on the mound. Kluber pitched 1 inning for the Rangers, and that was it. So it's not like this franchise hasn't seen the worst case scenario in recent memory. You could say that they are due for some good luck, but you know how that works. So yeah, they need him to pay off. They need that risk to pay off for him. And frankly, the same goes for Andrew Heaney, who was really good as a Dodger last year, but still 72 innings, I think. They just signed Nathan Eovaldi. How do we feel about him holding up? Martin Perez had a career year last year, pitched 196 innings. He made his first All-Star game. That's great. Can he do it again?
Yeah.
Those are all there's just as a quick follow-up, and that's interesting. You bring up those 3 names, and all 3 of them have a significant amount of risk attached to them. Do you see anything from an organizational perspective that the Rangers are doing, or that may help to keep these players on the field?
They have done a lot of work. They had that program a few years ago, the deload program, that just really backfired on them with their guys, when they were drafted, their high school guys, they didn't let them pitch for a while. They just basically told them, go work out. And then they brought them back too fast, and you saw a higher than usual number of guys that ended up having to get Tommy John surgery. And they did not have the chronic workload to kind of keep those muscles in condition. And so when they came back out and started pitching again, it backfired. I think the team, obviously no team wants their guys to get Tommy John. It's like you're not going to find a major league team, like not even the Marlins are out there going, I don't care, But I think that was a little bit of a wake-up call of like, okay, well, that definitely didn't work. Let's try something different. They've had reasonably good luck, Corey Kluber aside. They've had reasonably good luck with guys coming back. So, Mike Minor is, I think, a good example of a guy who had a lot of injury history before, had been a relief pitcher, wanted to be a starter, and the team went, yeah, we can keep you healthy. We're going to really reduce your workload here the first year in. You're going to be really frustrated. You're going to walk off the mound every night just, kicking the dirt and swearing, but you're going to thank us in the long run. And that worked. Lance Lynn came in. Really good success with Lance Lynn. Kyle Gibson was a better pitcher in Texas than he'd been before and has been since. So they've had some success with starting pitchers. I mean, even Martin Perez, who the problem was up here before he left. Is this all going to be video, or is this just audio? I'm pointing to my head. I don't know if the
audio.
Okay, I'm pointing to my head, listeners. The Perez's problem was all in his head before, but when he came back, big success his first year back in Texas. So there is a little bit of track record of them having success with it. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, or what methods they're using, but it does seem to be working reasonably well. So yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to count on that to apply. And we haven't even talked about John Gray yet, who might have the least amount of risk in the rotation, and he still hit the injured list a couple of times last year. So they are right now throwing a bunch of chips on the table, setting the table on fire, and being like, this is either going to work or we're going down in flames, baby. Let's go.
The thing that I really find interesting about that too is that they have a lot of depth all of a sudden in pitching, it seems like, especially in the rotation. I mean, I'm going to ask you about the bullpen in a little bit, but you brought up John Gray, you brought up Eovaldi, you brought up Andrew Heaney, they brought back Martin Perez, but then they also have Jake Odorizzi, who's got a lot of experience starting, Glenn Otto, who showed some potential, and our old Chicago friend Dunning as well, Dane Dunning. Do you think that maybe part of what they're thinking is, Levi, is if DeGrom and Eovaldi and Heaney need to have some time on the IL, that they've got enough guys to be able to kind of make some starts there in the middle for them if those guys should go down or need a phantom break?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can count Cole Reagans in that group too. He spent the last half of the last year in the big leagues. Not that if you're pushing for a playoff spot, do you want to subtract Jacob DeGrom and add Dane Dunning, like probably not. And I don't mean that as any offense to Dane Dunning. I think he would also tell you that he's not Jacob DeGrom. But yeah, it is. It absolutely is depth. And it's, Owen White's not too far off. Cole Wynn's probably not too far off. I think he probably took a step back last year, but not too far off. And in a year or so, you've got Jack Leiter. You've got maybe Kumar Rocker coming up. Ricky Vanasco has looked really good in the minor leagues at times. I think they thought Mason Englert was going to clear the Rule 5 draft. He didn't. But I'd be surprised if he sticks at the big leagues with the Tigers all year long. So it's not just depth at the big league level. They've got some depth through AAA and AA as well, which is, kudos to them for assembling that level of depth. But you're absolutely right. That's going to be very relevant when it comes to, hedging their bets on the health of these guys that they've signed.
Out of those pitchers that were just mentioned, is there one of them that you think could really surprise us this coming year?
Surprise good or surprise bad?
Well, I guess both.
Yeah. Glenn Otto's a really interesting one because he didn't walk a lot of guys in the minor leagues before he got to the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got to the big leagues and walks were a little bit of an issue for him. So if he can clean up those walks, now he's not going to be the ace of a rotation. I don't think that was ever in the works for him. But could he be a solid 3 if he's not walking guys? Like, sure, it could be that. I think that's probably a good ceiling for him. As far as surprise guys, I think it probably depends on how closely you follow prospects. I would not at all be surprised to see Owen White in the big leagues at some point this year. He looked really, really good in the minor leagues last year. So I think he might be the dark horse candidate to actually get some meaningful rotation innings this year. But there's a lot of depth to work through first. We still don't know if they're going to trade some of those guys for a left fielder, though.
Right.
It depends on what, maybe Pittsburgh, their ask for Brian Reynolds has been really high, but do they panic at the last minute and go, look, we know you don't want to be here. Fine. Okay, fine. We'll take Glenn Otto and, Ezekiel Duran and, 3 other guys. It won't be that. It'll be bigger names than that. But yeah, some of those guys could be included in a trade package to go ahead and solidify the lineup a little bit too.
Okay.
For sure.
That makes sense. Yeah, me and Glenn Otto have a particularly close relationship, Mike. I added and dropped him last year in fantasy about 100 times. So me and him are, I know him well. Maybe not
right,
as well.
Just right there on that verge. Yeah. And I think if the Rangers were playing fantasy baseball, they probably would have done the same thing. He'd have an outing or two where you're like, that's it. You did it. Yes, do that again. And then the next outing, he would precisely do not that again. So, which he's young, it takes guys a while to get consistency. I had a conversation with Austin Bibens-Dirkx, if that's a name you remember from a few years ago. He was
for sure.
Journeyman, cool name, like who has the last name of Bibens-Dirkx with an X at the end, but just had been through so much crap in his professional career that he was just extremely down to earth. Like he looked like a plumber. Like he looked like he was the guy in the clubhouse who was there to fix the pipes. And very approachable, a lot of good conversations. And there was a game when the Rangers were in Washington. They were taking on Max Scherzer, and they just had this rotation crunch with guys either getting hurt or some scheduling thing. And it was Austin Bibens-Dirkx, who was 33 years old or whatever. This journeyman who had played for, I think, like 16 different professional teams in a number of different countries against Max Scherzer. And so the question was like, okay, how much are they going to lose by? It's 12-1, 15-1. Are we going to have a close one and make it 7-4? And Scherzer gave up a couple of runs, and Bibens-Dirkx had the game of his life. And he went out and shut the Nationals down. They win the game. He was a little shaky in the first inning, and then they couldn't touch him. Like he looked like an absolute ace out there, and he beat Max Scherzer. And I talked to them about it when the team got home. I wasn't on that trip, and I said, "Dude, like, what was that? Like, where did that come from? Why aren't you doing that all the time?" And he said, and I'm butchering this quote. So I'm just going to paraphrase it, but something along the lines of, you don't make it to the big leagues if you can't have days like that. Anybody that has made it to the big leagues is capable of having a day like that. What separates guys like me from guys like Max Scherzer is he has days like that consistently. Like he does that every time. He goes out, and if he doesn't have his best stuff, he finds a way to be Max Scherzer every day. I'm working with a lot less, but once in a while, I'm gonna put it all together and have a day like that. So yeah, Glenn Otto, like, could he pitch a no-hitter in the big leagues? Sure, he could. You don't count on him for it. Like you hope that he makes it consistently enough to be a number 3 starter. And finding that consistency is just as important for big league guys as finding a slider that moves at a certain spin rate or whatever. Like once in a while, you're going to get that DeGrom slider from some generational talent. But most guys, it's, can I bring this pretty okay slider and make it the best that I can do it every time? And that takes time to learn. So I'm not worried that Glenn Otto's never going to make it as a consistent starting pitcher. This takes a while.
Man, that's a great story. It reminds me of the quote from Moneyball, how can you not be romantic about baseball, right? I mean, on any given day, anybody that's there has the ability to do that. Shifting gears a little bit, Levi, I write about bullpens for Fantrax, which is a fool's errand, obviously. What do you see happening with this bullpen? I mean, I think, obviously, it's bad that the guest is laughing already, Torres. But a lot of people, I think, were looking at that over the last couple of years. It was Barlow, then maybe it was Leclerc, maybe it was Hernandez, then back to Leclerc, maybe it was Matt Moore. What do you think they're going to do here? I mean, obviously they've spent more than almost $800 million in the last 2 years on free agents, but haven't addressed this spot.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that moving forward here as they go to spring training? Do you think that Leclerc is going into it with the job, or do you think that they're going to try to bring somebody else in to compete with them?
You guys don't think Kyle Funkhauser is going to make the team out of camp?
I think he will make the team. I actually like Kyle Funkhauser. I saw you put it on Twitter yesterday, and I think he was good the last time he played.
He was. I don't think he's a closer though.
No.
I don't know that I've ever seen a more impressive stretch from a Rangers closer since I've been covering the team. I'm not saying ever. Neftali Feliz was electric, but I started covering the team in 2016. I think the strongest stretch I've ever seen from a closer was in 2018 when the Rangers traded Keone Kela to the Pirates and Leclerc took over as the closer. And he was a phantom out there. Like he calls it the slambio. It's like a slider combio. It's like slider changeup combination, but he throws 2 different ones. One breaks right and the other breaks left, and they look the same until they get, until you start your swing, and then it just sort of seems to make up its mind in the air, like, I'll go the other way. He was filthy, and then of course had Tommy John surgery, came back last year, and even before the Tommy John surgery, frankly, in 2019 in the closer role, it looked like his mind blew up a little bit. Like he would uncork a pitch once in a while that just, it looked like it looked like Henry Rowengartner from Rookie of the Year throwing the ball back in from center field. You're just like, okay, wow, you threw that really hard. It would have been cool if you had aimed for the catcher's mitt, though. I think let's do that next time. So it's in there. As we talk about consistency, and he looked pretty good when he came back last year from Tommy John surgery. So I think, barring some trade or barring some, I don't even know what closers are still on the market. I don't think there's that many. It's probably Leclerc. Jonathan Hernandez, I think, has the stuff to be a closer. And so if he's your 8th inning guy, great. But after that, man, it does get a little dicey. I don't think Joe Barlow should be a closer. He did have flashes last year where he put it together and looked pretty good in the 9th inning, but if he's your 6th or 7th inning guy, I think that's a better fit for him. So you're kind of starting to see the shape of it a little bit. And, is that a playoff bullpen? Maybe not. Where the Rangers bullpen strength lies really is in their long guys. I think, if they don't go with a 6-man rotation, which I don't think they've eliminated as an option yet, given the risk to all these starting pitchers we talked about. But I think Odorizzi probably profiles as a really good 3-inning guy. He definitely suffers the further into the, times around the order he gets. Taylor Hearn struggled as a starter last year, but once he got to the bullpen was very effective. And then Brock Burke, came back from shoulder surgery and looked like a world beater last year. So that's that's some guys. I think I've named 6 now at this point, and then you go, okay, well, Josh Spores, can he figure out how to throw strikes? Let's see, Dennis Santana. I always say Danny Santana because he always played for the Rangers too. Also played for the Rangers. Dennis Santana's with the Braves. He's gone. They've got a kid in the minor leagues, Chase Lee. He's a side armor. Came from Alabama. They call him the Viper, which is a pretty sick nickname. I think he could be a different look guy. I don't know that he's got the stuff necessarily to be a closer, but bring him in for an inning and confuse everybody for a little while. That could work. So the answer is convoluted because I think the situation is convoluted. I still don't know what they were doing with Matt Moore. They didn't trade him at the deadline last year. I don't know what the offers were, so maybe they were not enough to make it worth signaling to the team that we're giving up, but it's not like anybody expected them to have a miraculous second half. And at the time they said, Martin Perez sticks around, Matt Moore sticks around. We want to bring both of them back next year. They brought back Perez. Moore's a free agent, and it doesn't look like he's coming back. Like, to hear Chris Jung talk, it didn't sound like, oh yeah, we're close. Like, don't worry about it. He basically was like, well, he's a talented pitcher and a lot of people want him, and we're still having conversations, and more or less he's not coming back. So they should have traded him.
Mm-hmm.
And now they should bring him back because they definitely need him. He was good in every role last year, from middle relief to he closed a few games. He might be the best left-handed pitcher left on the market. I don't have the list in front of me, but he was very, very good last year. So if they don't bring him back, it's going to have to be somebody.
I'll throw out one name who you mentioned, like closer still on the market, and I feel like he's still looming, is my old buddy. I'm a Yankee fan, and so Aroldis Chapman is one guy out there who I could see a team like the Rangers. It's just hard for me to believe, and listen, I don't know anything about anything, but it's hard for me to believe that a team like the Rangers that's going just all in this year with all of this money, and really seems like they're going for it right now, that they're going to go in with kind of a mishmash of, maybe it's Leclerc, but like, we don't really know. Like, it seems like they're the type, especially with an old school manager, that wants like a proven guy. So do you think a guy like Chapman could be a fit there?
I mean, okay, let's say you got 2 guys on the market. One of them is Aroldis Chapman, and then I'm going to give you the stats for the other one. The other one had an ERA of 4.46 last year. He walked 28 guys in 36 and a third innings. He did strike out 43, so it's still more than one per inning. But let's see. He only gave up 4 home runs in 36 innings. But that's your other guy. He had a FIP of 457. If we're doing WHIP, if that's an important fantasy stat, his WHIP was 1431. Which one of those guys do you sign?
I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
Neither.
Exactly. Mike is 100% right here. The answer is neither, because they are both Aroldis Chapman. He was not good last year with the Yankees, and I get that he wasn't happy, but he has fallen off a little bit. And can he come back and be the Aroldis Chapman of old at 35 years old? Maybe. But we've already expressed the amount of risk that the Rangers have taken. And hey, maybe that means that they just don't care about risk and they're going to do it. But I just don't think that's the guy. And especially with the way that things went at the end of the season, where he was, left off the roster because he didn't show up, like that off the field question marks about a guy. You get away with that when you're throwing 104 miles an hour. You don't get away with that with a 4.46 ERA and 28 walks in 36 innings. Like, I just don't. The Rangers are a young team. They've signed some veterans, they've signed some clubhouse leaders, but when you've got a young team and there are questions about a guy's off-field commitment, and I know that there are like, that's a landmine when you start talking about off the field stuff, because it seems like it only gets brought up about a certain group of guys, and that is not my intent here at all. But it's just what I saw from him last year. If I have a young team full of guys that I want to be a dynasty, right? Like, they've got these minor leaguers, they've got minor league depth. There's going to be a lot of guys coming up through the clubhouse. You're trying to win, and you need guys who are going to keep that clubhouse up tempo, all in. Like, you want the personality of guys who are all in. Chapman kind of showed his backside last year. And if you show your backside and you've got an ERA of 160 and you're throwing 104, everybody kind of goes, that's just a roll.
Right.
He's a corker, like we love that guy. You pull that kind of business when you're not going well, and I think it puts a team off, especially a team like the Rangers with as many young guys as they've got. I think it puts them off of wanting to sign a player like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, absolutely fair points. And listen, I hope it's Leclerc. Anybody who throws a Slambio, I mean, I don't know how I've never heard that before, but that's a scary pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I like about Leclerc too is he's kind of this quiet guy, and he seems a little nervous on the mound, right? Like if you see his facial expressions, he looks like he's always just a little like nervous. Who was the guy? Brandon Mann. So Brandon Mann, similar to Austin Bibens-Dirkx, had been around for forever. He was 34 years old when he made his big league debut. Came up to the big leagues in 2018. And somebody asked him a couple of games in, like, it seems like you're fitting in well. Like, how's the thing going for you? He's like, yeah, man, Jose Leclerc has really taken me under his wing. And Leclerc in 2018 was like 23 years old, I think. Let me look and see how old he was. I've got my other computer here in front of me. 2018, he was 24 years old. And he just like, hey, man, come with me. His English wasn't good. He was like, come with me. We're going to the video room. Let me show you where that is. Like, just a natural leader. Yeah, you just hope he can keep it together and find a way to close out games like he did in 2018. Because if he can do that, the personality, that's the guy that you want being your closer. The guy that just it's a big tent. Everybody's involved. Like, come on, you're my guy. He's a glue guy in that clubhouse. So yeah, I mean, from a personality standpoint, and I know that I'm piling this right on after I just said the opposite about Chapman, but yeah, like Leclerc is the guy if he can pitch. And
well, this is stuff that matters, and this is why we find these interviews so valuable, and we appreciate you sharing info like that, because it's, that is stuff that gets factored into decisions, and that ultimately impacts production, and impacts our game. So absolutely, that stuff does matter.
Yeah. So Levi, one of the things you kind of touched on a little bit ago was, the potential acquisition of somebody like Brian Reynolds, right? And you look at the Rangers outfield, and like we talked about before, despite all the money that they've spent, they've not really addressed this position either. Now, this is coming from the guy who just took Adolis Garcia in the 5th round of an NFBC draft this afternoon, and was very, very happy to get him where I got him. But outside of Garcia, what is this shaping up to look like? I mean, are we talking about Josh Smith here? Are we talking about Bubba Thompson? How do you see this shaking out?
I don't think Josh Smith is going to be a starting outfielder, although I think he is going to be one of about 5 guys competing for that left field job if they don't bring in anybody else. Garcia in right field, that's a lock. I think he did a better job last year of maintaining his conditioning so he didn't fall off in the second half. And, for as old as he is, this is only going to be his 3rd full big league season. So he's still learning how to, be a big leaguer and what it takes to do a full season. I would not be surprised to see him be even better this year than he was last year. Center field, I think Leody Taveras still has to get that shot. I mean, he was pretty good for the first half of last year, and the second half, it was real bad. Could that just be him also kind of having some of that fatigue of, he missed the 2020 minor league season and had to sort of get some big league experience. He probably wasn't ready for that. 21 was a mess. So, but his prospect status is such that they're not going to just give up on him right now, unless it's a trade for, hey, Sandy Alcantara comes up on the block and the Marlins are like, we want Leody. Yes, you can go right on ahead. But I think
he's 24. It seems like he's been around forever, but he's still so young.
Right, he is still young. Hopefully, he will be able to kind of grow into the role that has seemed to have been destined for him for a long time. And then, left field. Ezekiel Duran has been playing left field in winter ball. I thought he showed flashes of being a really well-rounded player last year. He's faster than people think. He's got some pop. He's a good hitter. Just was maybe a little overmatched by big league pitching last year. First year in the big leagues. I'm not too worried about it. Bubba Thompson would be my starting left fielder. His speed is such. So the lineup is, here's why. The lineup is better than people think, right? You got Seager and Semien at the top. Surely Marcus Semien is not going to take 2 months to hit a home run again this year. Those guys are pretty good. Nathaniel Lowe won a Silver Slugger. People forget that Mitch Garver exists because he was injured last year, but Mitch Garver's also a pretty good hitter, generally speaking. Josh Jung, this will be his sort of first full year in the big leagues. I don't know that you can count on him to be a star, but he's hit everywhere he went and just mashed when he got to AAA last year. So count on him being like good, right? Probably not great yet, but probably okay. Adolis Garcia, very good hitter. And then Leody Taveras, okay, we're starting to fall off on this lineup. But if Bubba Thompson is your 9 hitter, and at that point we're also banking on, I don't know, Mark Mathias or Brad Miller being your DH. So I understand my plot has holes here. That is the fastest man I've ever seen on a baseball field. Possible exception of Billy Hamilton. And I know there are guys that chart out faster. But as far as like covering the Rangers, watching the Rangers play, I watched Delino DeShields too. Bubba's faster. And that level of speed, and he hit well at AAA last year too. It's not like he was hitting 205 at AAA. He struggled a little to get on base when he got to the big leagues. But if he can get on the bases, there are 2 things. One, he doesn't have to be the guy that hits, big 15, 20 home runs a year. If his slugging percentage is like 390, but he hits close to 300 and gets on base at about 360, fantastic, because then he's on base for Semien, Seager, Lowe, Garcia. Like he's going to be getting driven in because he's going to be standing on second base. The other thing is, I watched him steal bases last year. He got caught, I think, 3 times stealing bases. In fact, I'm going to look this up to make sure.
18 for 21.
18 for 21. Okay. Yep. And he played a total of 55 games last year. He had 181 plate appearances and still stole 18 bases. So if he gets, 600 plate appearances, that's like legit stolen base threat there. 2 of the 3 times he got caught stealing, he was called safe. In fact, he was safe and popped off the bag. So really he got caught once. And that one was because he was stealing and the pitcher picked him off at first base and they threw it to second base and barely got him at second base. Wow. There was never a clean caught stealing for Bubba Thompson in 21 attempts last year. Now factor in the fact that they are making the bases larger this year. So you're getting an extra, I think, 3 inches closer between first base and second base. If he was safe, I mean, for all intents and purposes, never really got caught stealing last year. Now give him an extra 3 inches. The dude's going to be standing on second base anytime he's on first. Yeah. Like pitchers knew it was coming, would throw over 4, 5, 6 times. They can't do that anymore this year either.
Right.
That is a weapon. And if he can even get on base at a 330 clip, and it's mostly singles, it's not going to be reflected in his slugging percentage, but that's basically a double because he's going to steal 65 or 70 bases under these new rules if he can get on base. So he'd be my left fielder.
I'm getting like all excited. I'm taking him in the first round, Mike. Bubba Thompson, let's go. I'm hyped up.
I hope it's the league I'm in with you then if you do that, Torres.
He could steal 200 bases like the way he's talking here.
You better also have Aaron Judge because Bubba's not going to hit that many home runs. So you're going to need to make up for the home runs.
But listen, so let me ask you, he's projected right now. We use a projection system called Steamer. They are projecting him right now for 311 plate appearances. Sounds like you would take the over on that, Levi.
Yeah, man, it's a broad variance, right? So if he comes up and he is the starting left fielder, actually, I don't think that's going to be the case because I do think they're going to get a different left fielder. I think he's going to be a 4th outfielder for them, a defensive replacement, and a pinch runner is what I think as of, January 6th or whatever, whenever this airs. That's what I think will happen. If he's the starting left fielder and he comes out and he hits 205 for the first month, then he's not going to get 300 and what would you say 325
311
it'll be under, I think. But if he comes out as the starting left fielder and he does what I'm talking about and he hits about 260 and he gets on base at about a 330, 340 clip, then I think he gets 600 plate appearances. So I don't know that I would,
there.
I don't know that I would put money on the over or the under, but I would say that it probably ends up being not close to that number. I think it ends up being way under or way over.
Yep.
That's really interesting.
All right,
Watch, he's going to have exactly that many plate appearances now, and I'm going to look like an idiot.
No one will remember. It's January 6th. No one's going to, go back and listen to this afterwards. So you're good. Let's transition from the outfield to the infield. They got studs all around there between Nate Lowe, Semien, Seager. You mentioned Josh Jung. What is the outlook for him this season? I know, he's one of the top prospects in baseball. What are your expectations for him this year?
Man, I'm going to play the exact same song for him that I played for the starting rotation. I think primarily want him to stay healthy. He has had injuries each of the last 2 years that have set him back. He ended up playing between the Rangers and Round Rock last year. He played, what are we looking at? 59 games last year. So I think the second half will be a grind for him, even if he does stay healthy, because the conditioning is going to, you have to do it to do it. The most games he's ever played in a year, including college, is in 2021, he played 78 games. So that's, I think, in the second half will be a problem. If you're not in a dynasty league and it's, August 15th and Josh Jung is slumping, I would say go ahead and drop him. But as far as production goes, in those 23 games at Round Rock, he had 6 home runs, and I think he had like 5 of them in his first 7 games or something stupid. He hit the ground running. He slugged 846 in AAA last year, and that's after in 2021 between AA and AAA he slugged 990. He hit 19 home runs in those 78 games. He's got more. The big knock on him when he was drafted was he's a pure hitter. He's got great bat to ball, great hit tool, not a ton of power. But he has hit the ball over the fence pretty consistently as a pro. So I think when he is healthy, he's going to be good. I think he will be better in 24 than he is 23. I think you just got to give him a season to get his feet under him, learn what it means to play an entire big league season, and hope to God he stays healthy.
Yeah, all Mike, people are fantasy gamers are pretty hyped on him. I'm looking here at his ADP. He is sitting at 215 right now in these early drafts, which I'm surprised given the uncertainty. His projection, to be honest, doesn't look that fantastic. And given how he played at the end of last season, I guess there's some question marks, but that prospect pedigree, it seems like has people really excited about him.
I'm looking at different projections than you are. I'm looking at Baseball References, and they have him slugging 409, his on base at 292, and so OPS of 701 with 9 home runs. But they only have him with 250 plate appearances also, which the injury risk, you got to factor that in.
That's for sure. Levi, you brought up Garver a little while ago. And, I think Jonah Heim surprised a lot of people last year. How do you see that situation shaking out behind the plate? Do you think it's a pure split? Do you think that one of them DHs on the days that the other one's not catching? I know that's a little dangerous if they only carry 2 catchers, but how do you see that kind of shaking out there?
Yeah, I do think because Garver's injury was a flexor tendon, so he couldn't throw the ball. He did still take at bats for those last few weeks before he had surgery, but I think they'll want to sort of ease him back in and make sure. And he's supposed to be ready for the start of regular season. But I do think they'll probably ease him back in, probably DH him a little while. And it's kind of a nice double thing because they can see which Jonah Heim was the real Jonah Heim. He had a very good start to the season, but just caught more than he had caught in previous years. And he openly said it. He's like, just freaking tired, man. Like, I'm exhausted. Was not used to the workload. So I think if Heim takes it and runs with it, let Garver catch twice a week and be your DH, that's not a bad lineup. But if he doesn't, if he's the Jonah Heim that hit, 198 the year before, then okay, that's fine. We can split. And Heim's a great defensive catcher. I think there is value, even if he does hit 200, in what he brings to the pitching staff with his defense. But I think he'll get a chance to kind of just let's see what you can do. Because I think Garver's a free agent at the end of this year. Garver's not. I don't think they plan on him being the MVP of the 2026 World Series in Texas. So if you have to prioritize one, it's going to be Heim. But I think they do need Garver's bat in the lineup. So they probably, I would imagine, as the roster stands right now, I do think they'll probably let Garver DH on days when he's not catching, which might mean that they bring in a third catcher on the roster. So, Sam Huff maybe is your, right-handed bat off the bench, can play some first base. Maybe, frankly, a defensive replacement at first base late in the game, because that's Nathaniel Lowe's kryptonite so far has been his defense. So I could construct a lineup that has those three catchers, because Huff can also DH if he needs to. That man's got big power. Just the strikeouts have been a real problem for him. So
give me your best guess at what the lineup is going to look like 1 to 9.
Ooh, all right, let's do this. Let me pull out a pen and paper here. As I know, audio listeners love when people pull out pen and paper and just take 30 seconds of silence. Let me go. I'll stick with last year's top of the lineup. So Semien at second base, Seager at shortstop, probably Lowe in the 3-hole. Although if you want to split up the left-handed hitters, actually, you know what? No, I'm the new manager. I'm doing this the way that I want to do it. So Lowe is your leadoff hitter at first base, then Semien at second base, Seager at short. So there's your first three. Adolis Garcia in right field at cleanup. Do I think Bruce Bochy will follow my advice on this? I do not. I've been wanting to
have that pull, huh?
Lowe is such a good on-base guy that I think I would love to see him as a leadoff hitter. So there's your top four. I think let me run through my mind. See, I saw on I think it was it MLB Network or maybe John Boy the other day was saying like, Jonah Heim's your number 5 hitter. I can't believe this lineup. People think this lineup is good. Jonah Heim is not going to be. If Jonah Heim is the number 5 hitter, something has gone horribly wrong or miraculously right for Jonah Heim, because he's not the 5 hitter on this team. The 5 hitter on my team today is going to be Mitch Garver. I'm going to put Josh Jung 6 at third base. And now you just got to go catcher. Okay, so Heim's going to be my 7 guy at catcher. 8's going to be Taveras. And then in 9th, in left field, I'm putting Bubba Thompson. Although I want to just state for the record that I think there will be a different left fielder, who is not yet on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hyped him up. You got me excited. Now you're letting me down.
I know.
It's very fluctuating emotions throughout this interview here. But okay, so let me tell you where John Boy probably got that projection of Jonah Heim. It looks like on Roster Resource, which is a popular website for projected lineups.
I'm not ripping on John Boy, by the way. He's gonna do a breakdown of this video, and he's gonna make fun of my books in the back. And I know.
Hey, listen, if John Boy actually takes the time to listen to our podcast, I mean, whatever, that's cool, man.
Poking the bear here.
Yeah, but Roster Resource has Jonah Heim at number 5.
Okay,
they actually have Brad Miller as a DH at the 7-hole. It sounds like you think Garver is more likely to fill that role. Is that fair?
Yeah, but I don't know if you want both catchers in the lineup every day. I mean, they're going to definitely be. You're going to have to give even Garver rest off of DH if he's going to be catching regularly too. So Miller will get some time at DH. He'll probably get some time in left field as well. Okay. I think people also are forgetting about Mark Mathias, who the Rangers liked even before they traded. There was a trade, I think, the year before or during the offseason that they were considering trying to trade for him. They didn't like the price, so they didn't, but they traded Matt Bush. And at the time we all thought it makes sense you trade Matt Bush for this AA pitcher because you're not good this year. And, Matt Bush is 36 years old. But I had somebody in the front office tell me no, we like Mathias. We like the way that he hits. He's a good hitter. He's got a lot of diversity defensively as well. So Mathias is going to get some time at DH. I think he'll also be a utility guy. And then the guy that I haven't mentioned yet is Josh Smith, who you brought up. And I think he probably could also be a utility type player. I don't think there's necessarily that it's going to really hurt his development to get, play 4 times a week at 3 different positions, maybe be a, late inning left-handed pinch hit option. So, Brad Miller wasn't that good last year though. And if he's not that good again this year, he also is going to be a free agent. I don't know that they would keep him around for a whole long time if he's not producing. A great guy, like one of my favorite dudes in the clubhouse to talk to. It's a weird job that I have where I love talking to Brad Miller. It's always a pleasure when he's in the clubhouse and you go, "Oh, Brad's here. Great. We're going to have a good conversation." And then I come on here like, absolutely, he's not the starting DH. Sorry, Brad. It's my job to be honest here, and I am wrong a lot. So maybe Brad Miller will go back to hitting 20 home runs and he'll be the DH. I don't know.
Could be. Speaking of being honest, I'm going to put you on the spot one last time.
No.
We're kind of getting to the end of our time, and it's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much for making time tonight to be with us in the middle of winter here. But as an outsider, I'm a White Sox fan by trade, unfortunately. Rangers last year spent $561 million in free agency to bring in Simeon and Seager and Gray.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget Cole Calhoun.
Definitely. Who somehow will end up on the White Sox, I feel. But this year they've spent over $263 million bringing guys in. So they've spent quite a bit of change here in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Is this team going to make the playoffs, Levi?
Boy, that is a great question. There's so much I don't know.
The American League is so stacked, right? I mean, there are some really, really good teams in the American League, and there's not a lot of teams that are in full rebuilds like you see in the National League right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you used to be able to count on kicking the Orioles around. You can't even count on that anymore.
No.
Man, it's going to be close. I think they get bounced in the first round, but I think they make the playoffs. And that first round might be like, what are they still doing the 1-game play? I completely just left my body for the last month of the season last year. I don't remember exactly what the new playoff format is. I mean, I don't think they're anytime you get in the playoffs, you can, that could go any direction. Anybody can get on a hot stretch and do well. I don't think they are necessarily yet built for a deep playoff run. I do think the addition of Bruce Bochy was good. I think the man knows what he's doing in the postseason. Clearly, the players seem to love him. He has a track record. He knows what he's doing, and I think that's going to be really beneficial. It just all comes down to health, and not just the health of one guy, but the health of DeGrom and Heaney and Josh Jung and Corey Seager, for that matter, who also had a lot of health issues and played most of the games last year, but had a lot of health issues before. So, and Garver, does Garver come back? There are just so many questions about health that if 80% of those go well, then I think they make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If 50% of those go well, they're a 500 team, maybe at best. But man, it could just. The other thing, I was talking to the guys from the Cespedes Barbecue guys at the winter meetings, and Jordan brought up a great point that I hadn't considered, because we talk about all the things. The Rangers lost a lot of one-run games last year, and there were just all these little ticky-tacky things that went wrong, and their Pythagorean record said they should have been better than they were. And so the general consensus for a while is they weren't good, but they weren't as bad as all that. There was progress. And Jordan brought up, he's like, hey, nobody counted on Nathaniel Lowe being a Silver Slugger winner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody counted on Martin Perez being an all-star. Nobody counted on Jonah Heim having the first year that he had. There was a lot that went right also. So yes, you're counting on some of that bad luck to flip, and you hope they don't lose 191 run games this year like they did last year. But you can't just count on the bad luck to flip and not count on the good luck to flip too. So I think there's a lot of regression in both directions. I've been trying to make predictions and I've been bad at them for 7 years now. This is the hardest team for me since I started covering the team in 2016 to say with any confidence what's going to happen. There's so much variance at almost every position that it's like, man, I don't know. If they win a World Series, that will be the thing that surprises me. If they win 50 games, that would be a surprise to me.
They were 68 and 94 last year, but I'm looking at the relative power index on ESPN, and their expected win-loss record was 77 and 85. So they're saying, and I'm pretty sure it's like using the Pythagorean win-loss record. So that's it's a pretty significant difference. And with the additions that they made, I hear you. There could be regression in the other direction, but some of these additions, if they stay healthy, I think there is some pretty significant upside for them this season. We really haven't talked about Bruce Bochy, and I think that's probably a bigger deal than most managers that are brought in, just given his track record. I'm wondering, Levi, what do you think his impact is going to be on the team this coming season?
Ideally, it'll be just stability, right? Like the team has just come through a major rebuild that was frankly delayed a few years longer than it should have been because ownership was pretty adamant. Sorry, let me make sure that I don't get sued here. I have heard that ownership was very adamant that they wanted a competitive team on the field in 2020, and that's when they should have been tanking and winning 50 games. And so they just kept cobbling things together. And finally, when everything went south in 2020, they're like, okay, here we go. And let's now try to get this rebuild done. There's been so much turnover of players, of staff. John Daniels had been with the team for like 20 plus years. He's gone now. Chris Woodward was a super nice guy. Another one of those guys that I'm going to miss talking to every day. He got canned in the middle of last year. So it's like, can we just get a guy who can, with his big, enormous bear voice, sit down and have everybody agree when he goes, okay, calm down. Like, it's gonna be fine. If he can be that stabilizing force in the clubhouse, that's gonna go such a long way. Now, add on to that he is almost certainly a Hall of Famer as a manager. He has 3 World Series wins, so he's got the skins on the wall that when he says to do something, right, he knows what he's talking about. I really think it should be beneficial, but I think most of it, guys know we were talking about earlier where like you don't make it to the big leagues unless you can have a day like Austin Bibens-Dirkx had. You don't get hired as a manager if you don't know how to like understand analytics and you don't understand what matchups mean, or like you don't understand how to look at a player and go, yeah, he's getting tired. I can see his whatever spin rate's falling down, or it's time to pinch hit this guy here because the numbers say that. Everybody knows if you get hired as a manager, like you've passed that test. You know what the scenarios are. You're smart. You know what you're doing. The difference in good managers and great managers is a good manager might know that it's time to take a pitcher out of a ball game. A great manager will make let me phrase that differently. A good manager might know that the numbers say, let's leave this guy in and he should stay in the ball game. I just want to come out and get a check. A great manager will come out, know he's going to leave a guy in the game, and walk away with that guy believing that because that manager said the things that he said, now I believe in myself more because I know he knows what he's talking about. So that extra confidence boost that the numbers are not going to be able to account for. A great manager knows how to get players to listen to him, knows how to get them on his side, where it's, I'm thinking of Tony La Russa last year where he was like, oh, it's like, I'm the dad and they're the brothers that hate me. And I'm like, Tony, man, what are you doing? Like, I have never seen that be a big league team where everybody hates their manager. And guess what? That didn't work out, man. Like, it's not like you need to be the player's best friend. You don't need to be the guy who's like, going out with him, but they need to trust in your conviction. They need to trust that you know what's best for them, that you have their back, and that you are going to make the right decision that's going to put them in the best position to win. And I think Bochy has that level of credibility. So I hope, for the Rangers' sake, that that is exactly what happens.
Take it easy, Antonio La Russa, because Mike over here is a huge fan of him.
I was just going to say, I think what you're doing is, I think you're feeding all of our guests behind my back a line or something to say, hey, make sure you bring up
La Russa, right?
Because Mike will be apoplectic in the middle of the show. You know,
honestly, the reason that I brought up La Russa was because you've got two now managers in the big league that are older. I mean, there was a trend for a while to bring in the young guy, the guy that had just finished his playing career, and it was like the up and comer because he's smart, right? He understands analytics, he understands the way the game's going, he gets it. And now you started to see maybe a trend back to some older managers. And I think, I don't know the age necessarily in and of itself has much to do with it, beyond can this person who played the game a certain way or managed the game a certain way adapt to the new information that exists. And it didn't look to me from the outside looking in, and I didn't cover the White Sox, but I just watching it play out, it didn't look like La Russa fully understood all of that and was trying to manage. La Russa's a Hall of Fame manager too, and I'm not knocking him as a manager. He was great in the 80s and 90s, also had those skins on the wall, but the game changed, and I think he didn't change with it rapidly enough. Right. Dusty Baker, on the other hand, he's also in his 70s, right? But he adapted. He understood what was going on and found a way to get the players to believe. And I'm not saying that Dusty Baker is an analytics, guru, or that he's sitting there with his iPad just like coding new ways to make the baseball spin. But he understands it, and he gets it, and he adapted with the game. And talking to Bochy a few times, it seems like he gets it. It seems like he is more Dusty than he is La Russa. And I don't mean to just crap on your favorite manager, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good.
Mike was going to do it anyway. But yeah, it is interesting how you bring up how it has shifted, right? We've gone from, analytics were the thing. Everybody wanted the young, analytically inclined manager, and now it's more reverting back to let's bring someone in who understands how to run a clubhouse and who gets respect from players. So,
well, because it's both, right? Like analytics is objective numbers, but it's not predictive. It's basically like going to Vegas and you get your hand of cards, and your hand of cards says, all right, you've got a 34% chance of winning if you tell them to hit. And you go, okay, well then no, I'm not going to do that. Like that's valuable. It is good to know what the odds are. It is good to know what, this guy's spin rate, this guy can't hit it. Great. But it's not predictive. And it also doesn't account for, your right fielder's going through a divorce. So maybe give him a day, right? Like there's no analytics for that. Your center fielder is in the middle of some crisis, or he walked in today and you could just tell he's, feeling great, or you see something from him in an at bat and you go, he's close. I can tell that swing, I can tell he's been slumping, but that swing, I saw it. He's close. That thing we've been working on in the batting cages, my eye can tell you he's about to do it. He's going to do it. There aren't analytics for that. So it is both. It's the conviction of the manager to get the team on his side. It's the being able to identify those things that the numbers don't have. But it is also very much like if you just ignore the numbers and go with, oh man, why is it the White Sox that I just want to rip on? Go with TWTW, like Hawk Harrelson's The Will to Win. You can't just rely on that either, right? Like, so it is a combination of both. And anytime there's any advancement, this is not just baseball, you'll see this in a lot of walks of life, but anytime there's any advancement, you'll see this swing to one side or the other. The pendulum just, whips rapid. Facebook cheated the system, and all of a sudden everybody was pivoting to video in our world, right? Writing became less important. We pivoted to video. And then here comes the Athletic, and they're like, hey, remember Grantland? We're going to write 2,500 word stories. And we pivoted back the other way. And now we're kind of finding that middle ground of like, yes, breaking news is important. We want the information out there. Obviously, we want it to be accurate, but it needs to be out quick. Let's give you some short things for the breaking news story. But at the same time, there are going to be people that want these more long form stories and that want to dig deeper and that are more, they understand more than a casual fan. So give them something to chew on too. Baseball is the same way, right? The analytics thing happened, boom, let's swing that way. And then there was the backlash, and then the backlash to the backlash. And I think, like with a lot of things we're seeing, it's both. Take the advancements, take the extra tools, but also don't abandon 150 years of history that, we can also have baseball people who understand baseball.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of science that's been incorporated into it with the data and analytics, but there is still an art, to the game. And even in Mike, in our game in fantasy baseball, I think that sometimes gets overlooked. Like there's so many numbers that we look at, but there is something to be said for being able to kind of have some intuition and kind of look at it from a different perspective, not just focus on the numbers. I think those are the best players. But Levi, one last thing I wanted to ask you, go back to, because you brought up Brad Miller, and you mentioned how it's hard. He's a nice guy, you enjoy talking to him, and but then you have to say, well, he may not even be on the team if he doesn't perform. So I'd imagine as a beat writer, there's just a very fine line to walk, right? You have to establish relationships with players, but you also have to be honest and report, on what's going on. So, we usually ask, like, we end on like a story, but I wanted to end on this. I find that fascinating, like just learning about your craft and, how you navigate that, how you navigate developing these relationships, but also having to report, honestly and accurately with what's going on.
Yeah. It helped me to learn that the guys kind of understand what I do. When I first started, I was under the impression that nobody read any of my work because I was working at a local TV station. I was not like I was not the T.R. Sullivan or Evan Grant or Jeff Wilson, right? Like those are the big three covering the team. And those are the local newspapers and MLB.com. And here I am, like some doofus who used to be a touring musician. My hair is down to my shoulders at that point. And I'm just like, I don't know, guys, just like happy to be here. And I assumed that nobody read anything that I wrote or tweeted or anything. And I just kind of was like, well, I guess we'll see if this works out. And I started doing these, I don't know. I don't remember what started it. I think for some reason I had Rafael Palmeiro stuck in my head. And so I made this Photoshop of a giraffe with Rafael Palmeiro's face. And I thought it was really funny. And so I just started doing these because I was never going to be the one to break news that first year. I didn't have any contacts. I didn't know anybody. So I just had this stretch of Photoshops available. And, somebody would get traded and I wouldn't have the breaking story, but of course everybody's talking about it. And so I'm like, so-and-so's got traded. Here's Gino Petralligator, and it's Gino Petralli with an alligator face. I did Gino Petralligator and Nolan Rhinoceros on the mound, with each other. And I started doing that for current players too. And just, it was just something stupid to do that would differentiate me a little bit. And it was fun and goofy, right? So at one point I get a tweet, and it's from Amanda Diekman. And she wasn't Amanda Diekman at the time, but Jake Diekman's then girlfriend, now wife. And she was like, I demand to see Snake Diekman. And I went, oh, no. You're not supposed to know about this. Why do you know about this? And I sent a DM. I'm like, please tell me this does not mean that the players know about this. And she was like, oh, 100% they know. Like, absolutely. Everybody thinks it's funny. I'm like, oh man, that's embarrassing. So I walk in, and Tony Barnett was my guy. Like, I would see Tony Barnett and like, I'd just go talk to him instead of doing my job. And I walked in, and he's sitting there with Jake, and they both give me the look of like, Amanda told Jake and Jake told Tony. And now here I am walking into Clubhouse, and they both give me the look like, and I walk in, I'm like, you guys you didn't see the thing, right? And Tony just goes, buddy, we know. Like, we saw it. Like, everybody knows. It's funny. And that was a huge lesson for me. And I'm glad that it worked out and everybody thought it was funny. But it was a huge lesson of like, yeah, they read what you write. Like, you are going to face these guys. It's not like when you were a fan and you could tweet like, oh, DFA such and such player, blah, blah, blah. You're a member of the media now, and there's a certain level of responsibility that comes with that. And if you say that, like, you're going to walk in and see that guy, and you're going to have to answer to him for the words that you said. So that was a good reminder. But then the other good reminder was understanding that the guys get it. They understand what the job is. And if you are all that most of them ask is that you be fair.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell you that Brad Miller might not make the team this year and Brad's upset about that, then I will walk into the clubhouse and we'll have a conversation about it. And he'll go, "Hey man, I heard what you said. And I think you were being unfair." And okay, Brad, you hit 212 last year. Like, so what did I miss? And he might have a good point. And he might tell me, "Well, you didn't see, do you remember how much I was on the IL and I had the neck injury and that really impacted me?" And, okay, fair enough. And I will learn from that. So you have to have a little bit of a thick skin. You can't be defensive. You have to be willing when you write something about somebody, like if not negativity, I don't want to ever be negative. But if a hard truth is necessary, then I will write that hard truth. And the next day I'll make sure that I see that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a fine line there too, where I don't want to like behind his back, like write something about like, "Oh, this guy probably should be traded or should be released." And then the next day walk in and be like, "Hope you didn't see it. Hey buddy, how are you? Like, going out the water. Is everybody okay?"
Yeah.
You don't want to do that either, because that's sneaky and there's just not a lot of integrity there either. So it's a matter of just like show up, be there every day or as close to every day as you can be there. And if somebody has a problem, go, I don't get to get heated about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll occasionally see those confrontations. They happen about once a year. And I think last year it was in the Phillies clubhouse where Nick Castellanos had a problem with somebody and it got kind of heated. Right. I hate confrontation like that. I don't want that to ever happen to me. But also if I swing the other way on, I'm talking about pendulums, if I swing the other way on that and I only write nice things and turn a blind eye and be like, "Well, Brad Miller might be an all-star next year," I lose my credibility. People stop reading me and people go, "He's just a homer. He's a fan who gets to go into the clubhouse." So not only are we not getting good information from that guy, he sucks. I want to be in the clubhouse. He's not doing anything I wouldn't do. Why? There's resentment there. So I don't want to become that guy either. I want to be good at my job. And it's fortunately for me, I found out that lesson about the players read what you write in a very stupid and funny way that turned out to be great. And I still do those Photoshops once in a while when I'm bored. But I did Jacob DeGrom, from Wallace and Gromit. I was pretty proud of that one.
That's awesome.
Well, Levi, that was an awesome answer, a really good story in there. So thank you for sharing that, and just a good way to end a really good interview. So thank you so much for taking the time for everything that you shared with us. Just want to give you a minute here to plug any work that you want to promote.
Oh man. So I've got this Photoshop thing that I do that I hope you will all subscribe. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm definitely, I'm going to be looking out for those now.
I had to start a separate Twitter account because I just kind of wanted to hide them a little bit. So that's something about the island of Dr. Morneau. I tried to use Dr. Moreau, but a baseball player's last name. No, my work is on The Athletic, so it's not hard to find me. Levi Weaver is not a super common name. There is a singer-songwriter named Levi Weaver, and that's also me, but you should, ignore that one. There's a different singer-songwriter named Levi Weaver. He's from Montana, and I would always get my username before he got his, so he had to change and start a band name, so you don't have to worry about finding him. But it's otherwise an unusual name. It's pretty easy to find me. I am on, Twitter, and we all panicked, and I got on Mastodon recently, and on Instagram.
Yeah, I have an account on there somewhere that I just looked at for one day, and that was that.
Yeah, let's be Mastodon friends.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be your follower. I'll do that. So yeah, Twitter is 32ephus. It's all you spell out all the words. It's like if you threw an ephus pitch in a full count, 32ephus. I'm on Instagram also under 32ephus. So that's me. Not hard to find. Please. All I ask is if anybody follows me, don't reply to my jokes as if I'm being serious, because I'm not being serious. We can all just enjoy a joke and we don't have to explain it or be literal about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That applies to everybody. Don't do that to people online. Don't respond to jokes and be literal. Everyone.
Yeah,
I don't mean
find
you
that
guys.
doesn't happen too often. No, unfortunately, there's a lot that gets lost there, but it's a conversation for another day. Levi, thanks again.
Of course.
We are going to take a quick break.